Disclaimer: the following discussion is provided for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute professional, legal, medical, financial, or technical advice. Any opinions expressed are personal and should be independently verified before reliance or action. All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're essentially giving the Philippine economy a midterm report card under the Marcos Jr. administration. We're going to dig into the hard numbers to see what's really going on, what's working, what's not, and where the country is headed.
So what is the real story? You hear a lot of different things, a lot of noise out there, but we're going to try to cut through all of that. We're now at the halfway point of the administration, which makes this the absolute perfect time to take a step back and give an honest look at its economic performance.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll focus on the big three: economic growth, inflation, the cost of living, and that huge infrastructure push. By looking at these, we can get a really clear, balanced picture. This isn't about taking political sides, it's just about what the data tells us.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at economic growth. Did they hit their own targets? Then, we'll tackle the war on prices, which, let's be honest, affects every single one of us. After that, we'll dive into the massive Build Better More program, check on the nation's financial health, and finally, we'll touch on some of the political and social issues that could mess things up. Sound good? Let's go.
First up, growth. This is kind of the headline number, right? It's the broadest measure of how the economy is doing. So the big question is, did they hit the mark?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. After a really strong 2024, where the Philippines was actually one of the fastest growing economies in all of Asia, 2025 was a different story. You can see here that actual growth came in at around 5%, which, well, it fell short of the government's own target of 5.5 to 6.5%.
So you have to ask, why the slowdown? According to the administration's own economic team, it came down to two main things: higher interest rates, which were put in place to fight inflation, and government spending that wasn't as fast as planned. It's a classic economic balancing act, The medicine you use to cure one problem, high prices, can have side effects on another, like growth.
Okay, let's move on to our second subject, that war on prices. From day one, the administration made it crystal clear that taming inflation was their #1 job. They basically staked their reputation on it.
And wow, this timeline really tells the story. Just think back to 2023, when inflation was running hot at around 6%. It felt like everything was getting more expensive. But fast forward to the end of 2025, and they wrestled it all the way down to a much calmer 1.7%. And that success is what finally gave the central bank the green light to start cutting interest rates, which helps businesses borrow and grow.
So how'd they pull it off? They basically attacked it from two different angles. At the street level, they had targeted food programs, like that BBM Now initiative selling cheaper rice. And at the big picture level, the central bank kept interest rates high for a long time to cool everything down.
And this quote from Finance Secretary Recto really gets to the heart of why this mattered so much. It was all about protecting the budgets of everyday Filipino families. So, if we're grading this part of the report card, it's a clear success.
All right, on to subject number 3, building better more. This is the administration's huge, ambitious plan to upgrade the country's infrastructure, building on the Build, Build, Build program of the past.
Just take a second and look at that number. 9 trillion pesos. That is a staggering amount of money set aside for 185 major projects. We're talking about a plan that's meant to be a cornerstone of their entire economic legacy.
So where's all this cash going? Well, it's really built on 3 pillars. First, you've got massive public transit projects like the Metro Manila subway. Second, they're expanding the train network with things like the North-South Commuter Railway. And third, they're trying to get private companies more involved through a new set of rules for public-private partnerships, or PPPs.
But, and this is a big but, it hasn't all been smooth sailing. When you're dealing with that much money, it can attract the wrong kind of attention. In late 2025, some serious corruption allegations popped up, which led to investigations and caused a temporary but noticeable slowdown in spending. It just goes to show that having the money is one thing, but spending it right is another.
Okay, so let's check the country's bank account. How is the government managing its money? We need to look at the nation's balance sheet. We're talking debt, credit ratings, and how much cash is actually coming in. And this slide gives you a really nice, clean snapshot. On one hand, you've got international experts, the credit rating agencies, giving the Philippines a stable, solid grade. That's a big thumbs up. At the same time, the government managed to collect a record amount of money in 2025, partly because they're getting better at using technology. Both are really positive signs.
Now, what about debt?
You hear that word a lot, and it can sound scary. But the number that really matters is the debt to GDP ratio. Basically, how big the country's debt is compared to the size of its entire economy. And at around 60%, most economists look at that and say, okay, for a country at this stage, that's manageable.
For our last section, we have to look outside the spreadsheets, because an economic plan doesn't exist in a vacuum. Political drama and social issues, these are major headwinds that can knock any economic agenda off course.
And a perfect example of this is the breakdown of that uniteam political alliance. You've probably seen it in the news. The problem is, when political allies start fighting, it creates a ton of noise and uncertainty. And more importantly, it distracts lawmakers from the actual work of passing important economic reforms.
Now, on the social side, there is some really good news. The official unemployment rate actually dropped below 4% toward the end of 2025. And on the surface, that looks fantastic. It suggests that the economy is creating jobs.
But, and this is a really important but, we have to look a little deeper. Because while unemployment is low, underemployment is still high. That means a lot of people have jobs, but they're not working enough hours, or they're in jobs that don't pay well. So the challenge isn't just about creating any job, it's about creating good quality jobs, and that's a much harder problem to solve.
Okay, so let's pull it all together. What does the final report card look like? Well, for successes, they definitely get high marks for taming inflation and keeping the country's credit rating stable. The biggest challenge? Missing their own growth targets. That massive infrastructure plan is a huge in progress. And the things we really need to keep an eye on are that political noise and the persistent issue of job quality.
You know, if you step back and look at the whole picture, one thing becomes really clear. This administration has a very specific style. They're technocratic, they're data-driven. Their policies, whether it's managing interest rates or collecting taxes, are really guided by experts aiming for specific, measurable goals. And as we've seen, that approach has led to a mixed bag of some very clear wins and some very real challenges.
Which leaves us with this final big question. With inflation now under control but growth a little shaky, the administration is clearly betting the farm on infrastructure. So its ultimate economic legacy might just boil down to this. Can they actually build all those bridges, railways, and subways? And can they do it on time and without major scandal? The answer to that is probably going to shape the Philippine economy for a very, very long time. If this discussion was enjoyed by you or valuable information was gained, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with others who might benefit from it. For more updates, in-depth discussions, and the latest content, stay tuned to the channel.